Welcome to Touching the Edge. Welcome, my friends. My name is Drake, and I'm so happy to see you today. I'm happy to see you because we're focusing on finding what was never lost, recognizing that what we're looking for is actually deep within us. You know, it's kind of like having your glasses on your head or something, and you're looking for them all over the place, and you can't find them. And don't you feel silly when you recognize that they've been with you all the time? You know, to me, I think this is just such an interesting element. You know, it kind of reminds me of that image. Have you ever seen that image? It's kind of a famous one. It's like an image that's a double image. I mean, if you see it one way, you see an elderly woman. And if you see it another way, you see a young woman. And what I found is when I would see the elderly woman, I couldn't see the young woman. But when I learned to see the young woman, I started having trouble remembering how to see the elderly woman. And so what I want to suggest is finding what we lost is really finding what we identify with. When we realize what happens with identification, when you identify with something strongly, when you describe yourself as having anxiety, anytime you use that phrase I am and you connect it to something, you're not just saying that you are dealing with it now, you're predicting it for your future. You're saying that's your identity. And so subliminally, when we identify with something, what ends up happening is our imagination begins to come up and fortify that identification. It really doesn't make it real. It makes us what we feel is real. And what we feel is real, we are dedicated to seeing come about. It's a belief. We know that phrase belief, leaf means to love. It means beloved. So when we believe something, what's actually happening is we find ourselves in love with our belief. We've identified with it as who we are. And so I'm suggesting it's kind of like someone who looks up and sees clouds. One person sees a dragon and someone else can't see anything like that. We want to recognize that our way of forming reality, the way we frame reality, is what our imagination begins to flow around. And I want to suggest that if you imagine a world in which what you're dealing with is only troublesome, when you don't recognize the opportunity of what you're dealing with, when you don't recognize that the challenges that you face, your test is also your testimony. You know, for me, it kind of reminds me of like the civil rights movement. One of the greatest, most inspirational times for me is the period of American history during the civil rights movement, particularly in the 50s and early 60s. You know, that period, all the way through really, like 1968, that period is so powerful for me because it inspires me how people kept their eyes on the prize. Even when they're dealing with these major challenges, they don't let the challenges define them. They allow that goal, that mission, the prize is continuing to reframe reality so that what ends up happening is they end up expressing nobility. So I want to encourage you to see what it is that you're looking for. Don't see what you don't want to be happening. I'm not saying ignore that, but don't identify with that as though it's your deepest self. Don't breathe those fumes into your deepest self. Remember that your deepest self is shining from inside out, not outside in. And so when you do that, what you see and what you imagine will be the life that you dreamed of. So I'm going to ring the bell. I'm going to ask you to listen carefully. Here we go. Your frame is how you will create reality, and your imagination will make it so for you. So I want to encourage you to imagine the world more abundant. I thank you so much for your time. Namaste.